Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of Matsuribayashi. Give me a couple episodes before that settles in my mind. We're gonna be starting chapter 2. Quick recap. First chapter was a Takano chapter, tiny Takano. Most of it was or potentially all of it was flashbacks, but we got information that when Takano was young, she was orphaned because her parents were in a bad train accident, I think. And then she had to see her mangled father before he died, which was pretty horrible. Then she went to literally the worst orphanage on earth, I think. Because apparently well, at least they think that they killed a child to set an example. They have really bad torture, like punishments, from what I assume. Like I assume they had like a coffin one where I'm assuming they didn't really like say what it was, but just from the name you can assume they like lock you in a coffin for a certain amount of time. It's kind of like that's what I assume anyways, just because like a couple of years ago I watched a horror movie, which was bad, but it was also kind of about an orphanage and they also locked children in coffins, so maybe that's a known thing that happened, which sucks. We never really got to finish that story though. We don't know if she escaped or not. But eventually she was adopted by Hifumi Takano, so yes, Takano was not born into the Takano family, and that kind of highlighted her, at least this where her ideals kind of came from, at least the idea of becoming a god, and the interest in parasites that control human brains. That all came from Hifumi, which I kind of assumed already because of the diaries, or I guess the information about him in the last arc, Higurashi. Then we ended up back to Major Takano, which could have been present, but it also could have been a past Takano, maybe during one of the earlier years of the curse murder, or potentially like the year before or something like that. But she was Major Takano, so pretty good opening chapter, to be honest. Like a lot of good scenes. Again, I really like the dad scene with Takano, and the whole orphanage escape was really great. Super intense. Again, kind of comparable to Shion's escape, but like better, in my opinion. So I'm interested in seeing where this will lead from here. Will it be like, are we gonna still be on Takano for a while? Because I'm sure we're gonna be switching to the club members eventually. Unless they do my idea, which I said, which would have been kind of funny, in the earlier one, where it's like you focus on Takano and then you don't know what the club members are doing, and then they get ambushed for their doomsday thing. Which again, I don't think they will actually do, because we'll probably switch to the club members eventually. But I think I don't know. Are we gonna focus on Takano more, or are we gonna be switching between, I'm guessing, Rika / Keiichi and Takano, or is it gonna be like beginning Takano, get a lot of backstory on her, push that early years of Takano, and then go into the current day with either full Rika Keiichi club members, or like a split between Takano and the club members story? Or like it just starts alternating by chapter 2. Like we get some Rika and Keiichi, then it switches back to Takano. I think I'll follow one of those patterns, unless we just don't go back to Takano for a bit. Like we go back to Rika and the club members, and then in a later chapter revisit her childhood, because there's still a lot of questions, like what happened to the grandfather. I mean, we know he killed himself, but like why? And what was I gonna say? And like, did she escape the orphanage, I guess, are the main questions we have. So let's continue this. Okay, let's go. Continue. No tips. Weird. I don't.
はい、
Hotel employee, my new favorite character. I don't think we got tips in the first chapter of Minadoroshi. Also, yo, this song. Is it just me or haven't we haven't heard this in a while, I think. I remember this was like one of my favorites. I think I don't know. I feel like it's been a while, like earliest like Mayatashi or latest Mayatashi. It's a good song.
スピーチあと一人で乾杯に入ります。準備できてるね。
広報 OK です。内部全然聞こえないんで、スピーチが終わるタイミングでコールをお願いします。
いいかい。各宅にビールは10本ずつだよ。
10 bottles.
ちゃんと自分の縄張りに
Beer.
スムーズに運んでね。
Young hotel workers dressed smartly in bow ties pulled bottle after bottle out of beer cases, preparing for the toast. Toasting with beer, huh? Okay. I'm not complaining. They waited for their cue to serve the drinks while listening through the intercom. At a normal party, they could put bottles of beer on the table ahead of time, but if there was a lecture before the party, then they couldn't. Guests don't mind sushi going dry due to long speech, but they don't like seeing their tables get wet from condensation with bottles of beer. And more than anything, they certainly don't want to drink warm beer. That's why beer has to be served right before a toast. However, there's always a speech before a toast, and usually a long one. Especially at a big party like this, there are lots of guests that give speeches, so it's extremely difficult to know when to serve. For that reason, the bottles end up sitting outside by the banquet room. And people end up drinking warm beer anyway. There were several dozen tables with white tablecloths on them in the banquet hall room. Ugh. Approximately 8 people were sitting at each table, so there's at least a few hundred people in the room. The banquet room was filled with excitement. There are many plates with different kinds of food on each table. A sushi platter, a sashimi platter, a fruit platter. Also along the wall there were cooks ready to serve fresh sashimi. All the guests appeared to be well-mannered gentlemen and were clearly notable people in various different fields. The huge and beautiful chandelier above them clearly indicated that this hotel held a status good enough for these famous people. An elderly gentleman was giving a lengthy speech on stage before making a toast. Usually people don't like such long speeches, especially if it's before a toast. But the guests occasionally shouted, "Yes, yes," and gave him loud applause, filling the room with their fervor. Well, maybe fervor was a pleasant way to put it. It was probably more accurate to say their excitement was bizarre. Which country would actually teach people not to show respect to their own flag? So yes, obviously this is a Tokyo meeting. So again, voice acting stuff. I didn't actually check, but I don't know how I would check, but we'll roll with it, especially if it's just some randos talking. Once you get the main cast, I'm sure it'll be fine. There are no others. It's happening only in Japan. That's right, that's right. Oh. To know ourselves, to know our culture, to understand our history and our country itself. Those are the things that make you realize that you are a Japanese citizen, that make you understand that you are the part you play as a citizen of this country. And the feeling you get from that is love towards your own country. However, those anti-Japan teachers are proclaiming that it's militaristic brainwashing. Those stupid claims are wrong. What are those people doing anyway? They're teaching our children to hate being Japanese. They're the ones brainwashing them with this self-destructive education. They're teaching our children that Japan should feel ashamed of itself, and that they should be ashamed of being Japanese. Forget who you are and deny your country. That's what they're teaching them. These innocent children listen and believe such nonsense. Of course they do. They go to school and learn things, right? If their teachers teach them that, of course the children believe it. Can you believe such corruption exists? We must do something about this country's education now, no matter what it takes. The sound of applause filled the banquet room. All the gentlemen agreed and expressed that they felt the same way cheering on. That they felt the same way by cheering him on. After that, a gentleman wearing a cloth sash approached the stage. The hall welcomed him onto the stage with another round of thunderous applause. A rousing theme from a popular drama series played as he took the stage, but it was entirely unnecessary before the overwhelming applause. The Hanzawa Noiki theme just appeared. Imagine you're like in an exclusive, really important meeting with a bunch of famous people, and you go up for a speech and you just like rock the Naoki theme. If you don't know, that's like one of the most popular dramas. Obviously, that was after this time take place, but that's like the thing that just popped into my head. It's kind of epic, honestly. The man's sash carried his name in large letters, along with the name of the prefecture he was running for office in. Let me introduce you to a patriot, Kun. This man has served the former government as his right-hand man, as director of the office of the governor for many years, supporting the prefecture's government for a long time. Since the previous governor had decided to retire, he was appointed as next governor. Unfortunately, we have those anti-Japan teachers in our prefecture. While they proclaim freedom of education and freedom of thought, they're shamelessly forcing an anti-Japan education down our children. They don't teach real history. They teach our children that everything was Japan's fault. They don't even mention the true purpose of the Great East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, or all of those who fought to save Asian people from Western control. Obviously, this is, like, mainly not true. I mean, I don't feel like it's bad for people to be, like, super proud of their country, honestly. Me, I'm pretty neutral, but I do love Canada. Like, I don't think I would move anywhere else. Probably just because because it's a pain to learn a different language, but yeah, I guess it is, like, I'm not really supporting this, but I guess it is different in, like, countries that have, like, done bad things, like, really bad things, because, you know, Canada, it has done things, but, like, nothing, like, super notable or whatever. Like, I don't know how other people in the world thinks of us, but I know Americans always like to say we're, like, the friendly neighbors, or we don't really do much, and people usually just like Canada for that. but yeah, you know, places like Germany or Japan, like, I guess places are, like, on the wrong side of history for, like, big world events, might be, like, pretty awkward. And can probably rouse, like, pretty strong feelings in the regard of pride in your country and stuff, so it's pretty interesting. Again, I don't really know, I'm just assuming stuff, but I can just see, like, how it would feel, or whatever. I understand it, at least. Luckily, Canada has literally done nothing. Smiley face. They don't even talk about how many Asian countries were actually Western colonies before Japan stood for our freedom during the war. Our country has recovered amazingly since then, yet our children don't know any of that because those teachers don't teach them. How truly, truly sad. I can't stand the fact that those anti-Japan teachers are actually teaching children alongside those teachers who take teaching seriously. They're insulting our educational institutions. I will become a governor and get rid of those teachers. In the teaching, like, think about the teaching thing. It's probably like a good mix of both. Like, you should admit the bad stuff you've done, but also say the good stuff. So I'm sure like the teachers do say the good stuff, but like, again, it's kind of understandable if the teachers are just saying, Japan's like did some pretty horrible stuff, and the parents like, what the fuck? Especially like the older generation who are more prideful in general. Yeah. I will straighten out our education system and make sure our children will grow up to be decent young people who can carry on Japan's future. Hey, Blank Kunz announced his candidacy for next year's prefectural governorship. We appreciate your support for him. I promise I will straighten out Japan's education system. Thank you for your support. Again, the banquet room filled with applause. The man was receiving a standing ovation. I need to explain a bit about this banquet before you misunderstand. It wasn't the conference of a political association or a lecture by a political candidate. It was hard to believe, but this was nothing more than a meeting of College Alumni Association. Oh, this is probably pre-Tokyo formation. Though Tokyo, I believe it was like formed a bit ago, like a while ago. Maybe. It's like the early years at least. Maybe. Everyone should be familiar with what those are. Whether it's elementary school, junior high school, or high school or college. Once you graduate from one of those, you normally belong to an organization of alumni. I've literally never done anything with my alumni status in any level of education, I think. You receive invitations for reunions when you enjoy talking about good old days. Actually, I might have received a high school thing, because I got like a random friend invite from some guy. Like, I didn't know who it was, and then I'm like, oh yeah, it's some guy from high school that I vaguely remember kind of being friends with, but I ignored it because I don't care enough. However, there are many different types of such organizations. Some are simple, and some are united with much tighter bonds. And once an organization becomes united with those tight bonds, it's no longer a simple organization of alumni. Rather, it becomes a significant faction known as an alma mater clique. In Japanese society, it's traditional for graduates to form tighter bonds that go beyond the level of an organization. Also, the more superior the alma mater, the stronger the tendencies hold true. The Imperial University, one of the best universities in the country, is famous for the deep bonds its graduates form. Why do superior people like to bond? It may be because they take pride in being superior. I actually think that's what I was trying to say. If you think you're superior, you like to hang out with other superior people, because it keeps you on a high level, I guess. Or I guess, like, even if you think you're superior, if you hang out with other superior people, it elevates your claim to being superior. I guess. But more than that, maintaining connections is the most significant reason. All Imperial University graduates are elites in their respective fields. They are likely to succeed and become important people. When they do, the unity of their alumni association. Have I been saying it wrong? Have I not been saying alumni? I feel like I might have. Association gains immeasurable meaning. In fact, even today, the Imperial University graduates maintain their tight academic clique, and they hold great influence throughout many different fields. They interact with other universities as well, so graduates' bonds are extremely tight, even today. Additionally, while Imperial University usually refers to the University of Tokyo, sometimes it's used to mean all 7 major universities in Japan. They are located in Tokyo Tokyo, Kyoto, Tohoku, Kyushu, Hokkaido, Osaka, and Nagoya. They are all great schools. There happens to be an organization of alumni that includes all of those 7 universities. The elderly gentlemen in this banquet room were from each one of those organizations. However, not every graduate would get an invitation here automatically. It is a society of select gentlemen, and in order to become a member, one must first fulfill several conditions, such as recommendation from an existing member, contribution to the society, possession of status, and so forth. Therefore, all the members are important people from different fields, and obviously the power of this organization is of a political nature. But there's one more important criterion one has to meet to join. Strong patriotism, a heart that longs to contribute to Japan and its rebirth. As a result, this organization has become extremely nationalistic. Upon the stage, the candidate for the prefectural governorship was still talking passionately. And among those elderly gentlemen in the crowd, Takano can be found. Which Takano? Feel like this is... because it did sound like Tafumi was involved kind of in Tokyo a bit. But I'm gonna say... Mio. Takano seemed used to this kind of conference and seemed unsurprised at anything that was said. Honestly, I think it is pretty clear that Takano actually doesn't really hold any of these values because her motivations are completely different. But obviously, to obtain the status of Oyasho-sama, she would join this faction, who is more likely to allow this kind of stuff. Yeah, okay, it is Takano. But at the same time, she looked rather fed up with it. As she was in attendance, she must have been one of their members, which meant she possessed not only an extremely excellent academic background, but that the older gentlemen here acknowledged her equivalent contributions to society, and that she possessed strong patriotism. However, her academic background was the only qualification she had met to join. She was only able to join as a special case because of her connections. She didn't even hold prejudiced ideas like the other members did. So why was she here today? Probably because of the same reason as the man giving a speech up on stage. The man on the stage didn't actually have prejudiced ideas, much like Takano. She just wants the backing. He only prepared a speech that he knew the guests would like. I wonder if that's like... oh, I guess not. Never mind. Politicians only wanted votes. Each and every person has a vote, but appealing to each one of them takes too long. So the most efficient way is to appeal to organizations with a unified idea and unified will. In other words, this man was giving this speech so he can garner support from those powerful people. The elderly gentlemen in the banquet room will do their best to support him since he appears to share their ideals. They can offer him many different kinds of expediency, support, and assistance. To an outrageous degree, I might add. I wonder who's narrating, because it's not Takano, it's like a third party. But it's not like third person, because there's some flavor to the narration, which is interesting. If the day event continued in the same way, the organization would likely decide to officially support him. They will probably give him a great deal of financial aid. They'll assist him in different ways as well. Of course, the man on the stage won't be the only one gaining something. When he wins the election and becomes a governor next year, the organization will welcome the government as a new member and gain even more political influence. And eventually the organization will become so powerful that nobody can ignore it. Those of you reading this right now probably get the sense that they're no mere alumni association. You'd be absolutely right. After reaching this level, they were a fine syndicate. No, they would be a secret society if the group wasn't so open about its activities. Now, I'm sure some of you readers are brushing this off, thinking there's no way such a suspicious organization could exist in Japan. Honestly, like, I can see it existing in most places. Though maybe not as powerful, but I mean, I can see it. I mean, if they are that powerful, they would definitely be more hidden. But everything I've explained is entirely true. There are several such influential groups and organizations within our society, and you need to understand that they hold powerful political clout and influence our national policies. Some are the alma mater cliques like the one I've described above. Others are scientific societies that serving different parties, industrial groups, and advisory committees, religious organizations, community service groups, and so forth. Also, there are right wings and left wings, the hawk and the dove. I won't go listing out their specific names here, yet you've probably read them every now and then in your average newspaper. In Japan, the term for such forces aren't very common. Most of you readers probably think of a suspicious organization wearing white hoods when you hear the phrase secret society and laugh it off. What? Actually, like, I guess what you think of is like the Illuminati or whatever. I don't really know too many societies. Are like the Freemasons the same thing or not? I don't actually know. Do they wear costumes? Is there a dress code? I don't know. No idea. Not my expertise. Hello, train. But unfortunately, that's a huge mistake. In America, there are far more territory and citizens when there's way more groups like that. And they possess such vast influence that ignoring them is impossible. So the terms they use for such forces don't apply to those on the scale of this syndicate. Really? America? I mean, Tokyo is a pretty powerful organization. Is there something... I guess that is referencing the Illuminati, right? Sometimes people say that such groups have more power than the White House, and they're referred to as the shadow government. I have no idea what they're referencing. I thought Illuminati was more of a world thing. Maybe they're talking about like the banks. You know how people say the banks control the government. They're the true people. I don't remember names, but I know people have like specific people. I don't know, dude. This isn't a path of conspiracy. Well, not conspiracy. I mean, it kind of is. It's just a term, even though it might not be a conspiracy. But yeah, I'm more interested in the more other stuff. Other paths of weird stuff than this. That, I don't know. That wasn't good phrasing, but you get the point, hopefully. Even here in Japan, we had a shadow government before the war, our Zaibatsu. After we lost the war, the GHQ dismantled those blots, but 40 years have passed since then. There's no guarantee our country hasn't given birth to another shadow government, given how good we are at collusion, groundwork, and backroom deals. Mio Takano was in fact attending a conference with such a shadow government. Oh, well, okay, it is the same scale as the one they're referencing in America. Just kind of worded weird. It might appear to be a guest house at a huge golf course. There are no golfers in sight, but appearances, that must be it. But by appearances, that must be it. Appearances can be deceiving. This wasn't a golf course, but a huge backyard. The guest house was in fact a very stylish mansion. Normal people would be surprised to learn that this was a private residence. Ooh. And lots of new backgrounds, makes sense. I was actually kind of worrying this whole, or it would just be a black background for a while. Got some fancy houses. Fancy rooms. The interior of the building was as lavish as the exterior. There were beautiful carpets on every floor, expensive-looking decorations on the wall, and expensive-looking bottles of alcohol on the shelves. That's the kind of room Takano was in. There's a knock at the door, and an old man in a wheelchair and a young woman pushing it entered. As Takano stood up to bow, the old man stopped her by raising his right hand. Koizumi. Have you heard that name? It's possible, but I don't recognize it.
久しぶりだの。いつでも遊びに来なさいと言っとるのに。
そのお言葉だけで光栄ですわ、小泉先生。
The old man sat down on the sofa with assistance from the woman. He was very old, his face covered in wrinkles, and he could hardly do anything on his own. Even so, he still held a great deal of power and influence.
相変わらずお盛んですわね。首筋、口紅がついておりますわよ。
Man, still at it in a wheelchair, and no offense to wheelchairs, but I mean, I guess it's a better way to put it. Man still at it at a extremely old age in a wheelchair.
それ本当かね。
Oh, I have a story, but I don't want to talk about it. I'll leave that for another day. Actually, I won't. It's a pretty funny story. Just to keep it brief, when I was in Japan the second time with my cousins, we went into like this tower shop. Because in Japan, there's like, in the cities, there's like tower shops instead of like large malls. It's just like a tower with multiple floors, but the floors are like pretty small. And we went into like this sex tower shop just for fun, right? See what it's about, yo. And then there's this like super old man with a cane, just like in the vibrators section, just like testing vibrators. I don't know why, it was so funny. The man looked like he was like 80 years old, dude. I don't know, whenever I hear something like this, I just remember that. It's a funny scene. Not that I don't disrespect it, dude. If you still got the drive, go for it. Okay, there you go. There's no lipstick on his neck. The woman who was helping him with his wheelchair was too beautiful to be a mere helper, so Takano had suspected something. As it turned out, her guess was correct. Although he was so old that he could die the next day, he wanted to stay sexually active until the end. Yeah, that's why I thought of it. Honestly, it's respectable, dude. If you have that much drive. Anyway, let's continue on. Even the Grim Reaper would think that's just absurd. Chill, bro.
いつまでも小さいと思っとったらいつの間にの。
ご冗談を。本当にそう思われていたら、私のお尻を撫でようなんてなさいませんわ。
At least she knows how to play it well.
おい先短い年寄りに触らせても減るもんではないに。
私よりももっと柔らかいお尻を散々撫でておいでのくせに。
Takano and the old man enjoyed a tasteless conversation. They had clearly known each other for a long time and were very close. The young woman came back to serve tea. After she left, the old man started to speak.
しかし、ミオちゃんは本当に立派な子だの。
Wonder, also we don't know why she shortened her name from Miyoko. Because we did learn that her name was Miyoko Takano.
高野くんもこれほど立派に育ってくれて、きっとあの世で鼻高々だろうな。
そうであればいいのですが、祖父の偉業には私など足元にも及びません。
高野くんもいろいろと運がなかった。時代にも恵まれんかった。もし何もない時代に研究をしておったなら、あんたに引き継がせることもなく見事研究を完成させておっただろうの。
It was implied that he didn't get his breakthrough, or he didn't finish his research from the hint in Minadoroshi. The first hint for Takano's diary. Or, I guess the grandfather's diary.
ですが、そういう時代だったからこそ、皮肉にも祖父はひなみ沢症候群の存在に気づくことができました。
The world today is the nuclear era, with America and the Soviet Union glaring at each other over mounds of nuclear stockpiles. It takes nukes to have authority as a major power. Yeah, we've abandoned our nukes thanks to our 3 anti-nuclear principles. In this age, we are now a nation without nukes. How deplorable. In the middle of the 20th century, despite rising tensions between East and West, there were temporary peace known as the Cold War, brought by a balance of nuclear weapons pointed at one another. Permanent memberships in the United Nations were monopolized by nations with nuclear arms. They secured their predominance with nuclear weapons, bound the world with nuclear They bound the world with nuclear non-proliferation treaties, eternally banning non-nuclear nations from the world stage. For Japan to become a nation that can compete with the world, it must develop nuclear arms or something as powerful. That's what some people believed, at least. Realistically, Japan will never arm itself with nuclear weapons. I know. The citizens won't accept it. Even if government ignored their opinions and armed itself with nuclear weapons, it wouldn't work. Yeah. Canada doesn't have nukes, I think. I'm pretty sure it doesn't have nukes, like 90%. It's definitely an advantage. Obviously, it's not so oppressive now, but I do know, at least I've heard of the stories of how, like, countries with nukes would sort of bully other people at the UN. I don't know where, probably, like, in some sort of class, but I definitely heard, like, people like to throw around their nuclear weight around in the UN back then. Again, probably less prevalent now, because, I mean, nukes are scary, but I don't think anyone... But it's not as scary, because I guess people don't really expect anyone to nuke anyone now. All it was more uncertain back then, if I had to guess. By abandoning nuclear weaponry, Japan has gained the deterrent power of the United States. Deterrent, that's the word. Though some people thought the only way for Japan to become equal to the United States would be to get nuclear arms of their own. But realistically, that was impossible. Even if Japan armed itself with nuclear weapons, that wouldn't automatically let Japan join the great powers. Takano and the old man discussed the balance of nuclear power in the world. Eventually, the sound of the cuckoo clock reminded them to return to the main subject at hand. The old man pointed to the attached case that has been sitting next to Takano. Takano nodded once, opened it up, and removed the contents. Money? Yeah, there were brand new bills packed in it, so he's probably a major funder for Takano's research. At least the Hinamizawa Syndrome project. How much was actually in there? A bundle of brand new million-yen bills is 1 centimeter, so there must have been at least enough to make up 8 digits. There are also 2 more attachi... I don't know what that word is. Attach, but it's not... Attachi sounds dumb. Is it time to Google? Google. What's popping today? Ontario, Canada, COVID-19 is the top Google search in Canada, followed by Tessie cancer, which I don't know what that means, and China sends warplanes. Okay. Again, I do like that feature. It's very interesting what people are searching. What am I... I got distracted by these headlines. Attached, and an E. Is that like a French word? Sounds French. Attach... Attaché.
Attaché.
Attaché. Short or a person on staff for an ambassador, typically with a specialized area of responsibility, military attaches, or in North American, it means a short for attaché case. Ah, so it's actually not a real word. I mean, it is, but it's actually just a type of briefcase, I think.
Attaché case.
A small, flat, rectangular case used for carrying documents. There you go. I'm sure most of you knew that. I always like to add stuff in my mental dictionary, though. However, neither Takano nor the old man were surprised at all. Takano closed the attaché case and bowed.
ありがとうございます、先生。このご恩は忘れません。
金は人生の長い若者が持つべきだの。年寄りがあの世まで持っていくもんじゃない。金はあるだけものを言うが、現大事に使いなさい。
もちろんですわ。祖父の夢を実現するためだけに使います。
高野くんが羨ましいの。良いお孫さんを持たれた。きっとあの世であんたを自慢しているだろうの。
まだ自慢されるようなことは何もしていません。祖父の研究を完成させた時初めて、私は祖父に褒めてもらえる資格が得られるのだと思います。
本当に羨ましい。うちのせがれたちは全然ダメだ。金儲けのことしか頭にない。
I mean, I do agree. If you had a grandchild this devoted to like fulfilling your dreams, I think anyone would be proud. No matter, I mean, I guess it wouldn't matter what the dream is if it was your dream. So you would obviously care about it.
金は儲けてからが大切なんだ。その儲けた金でお国のために何を貢献できるかが大切なんだ。それこそが今日まで自分を育んでくれたお国へのご恩返しっちゅうもんなんだがの。
たくさんの恋人たちに気前よくおごるのもお国へのご恩返しなんですの。
It's a good jab.
もちろんだとも。あいつらが買い物をすれば金は巡ってお国に戻る。
There you go. He's putting money back into the economy.
金は天下の回り物だ。
However, those lovers would probably end up buying some foreign goods. Things probably don't quite work quite the way this old man thinks they do. I mean, some percentage probably on like clothes and fashion stuff, but you know, some of it will go back to the economy. Takano chuckled to herself. I honestly thought he was just joking, by the way, too, as a nice jab back, but
だが女どもにばらまく金とミオちゃんに託す金は意味が全く違う。
存じております。
ミオちゃんは今日までよく頑張ってきた。礼を尽くし大勢の人たちの信用と支持を取り付けた。今だから話すが、春山くんも望月くんも最初は君のことを若すぎると批判的だったんだがね。
come on, Mochizuki. I expected Hariyama-kun to doubt, but not you, buddy. Ha 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 ha.
だから私もミオちゃんのその努力を認めてその金を託すんだ。はい。そしてな、その金を私が託すつうことはの、私がミオちゃんを高野くんの研究の正式な後継者だと認めたということなんだ。
ありがとうございます。私ごとき若輩に委ねてくださったことに深く感謝いたします。
いやいや、これは高野くんと君の研究だ。彼もミオちゃん以外が引き継ぐことを望まなかっただろうの。だからミオちゃんがここまで上り詰めたおかげで他の年寄りたちをより説得しやすかったわけだ。
祖父の完成できなかった研究を私が完成させることだけが私ができる祖父への唯一の恩返しですから。 そのために求められる努力ならばいといません。
Takano smiled as she remembered everything she had to go through to get to this point. It went without saying, but the old men around Takano saw her as someone from their grandchild's generation, or maybe even younger. Just how much trouble did Takano have to endure in order to gain the trust of those with such a large generation gap? It was hard to describe to those who couldn't even imagine her trouble. But Takano endured it. She gathered allies, drove away enemies, garnered support, and forced them to recognize her. She spent a long time establishing trust and rising to a status that the old men would welcome. Which was all the more reason this meeting was a reward for her many days of hardship. Now that she officially had powerful influence backing her, she could spread her wings and see the completion of her grandfather's unfinished research.
さて、高野君の研究を正式に引き継ぐことになったなら、みおちゃんにも話しておかなきゃならんことがある。
何でしょう。伺います。
The old man paused and pulled an expensive cigarette from the cigarette holder on the table. Takano lit it up for him. She didn't smoke herself, but knowing that the old man did, she kept the lighter in her pocket. The constant build-up of little gestures like this was how she gained trust she held today. Takano could notice the Hinamizawa syndrome in Manchuria, not Japan. Yes. According to my grandfather's journal around 1940, he learned that many soldiers sent from Hinamizawa to the Kwantung Army expressed terminal symptoms, which led him to surmise that an unknown infectious parasite dwelled in Hinamizawa. Under the harsh conditions of war, people sometimes lose their mind. In those conditions, those who were sent far off battlefield from Hinamizawa spent their days under duress, and occasionally exhibited terminal symptoms, hallucinated, and caused twisted incidents. Yet that all occurred in the extensive chaos of the battlefield. Every incident was handled separately, and no one suspected that there was an underlying cause.
当時高野君は軍医少佐として海外に派兵されていて、現地の貿易研究所で各種伝染病の予防対策について研究していた。そんな中で偶然いくつかの錯乱事件が全て同じ出身地の兵士によって起こされていることを知った。高野君はひなみ沢出身者に特有の症状ではないかと仮定し、個人的にこの研究を始めたのだ。そしてひなみ沢出身の兵士を研究所勤務にして集め、いろいろと調査した。そしてひなみ沢独特のお社様信仰の存在を知り、特異な性質を持つ未知の疾病の存在を確信したのだ。
Some may wonder how he could be so certain that these symptoms were caused by unusual parasites. At the beginning of the 20th century, German doctors proved that some unknown diseases were caused by bacteria and parasites. At the time, it wasn't too far of a jump to assume that unknown pathogens could be behind unknown diseases. For instance, in modern times, it's been revealed that beriberi is caused by vitamin B1 deficiency. But at the start of the 20th century, many loudly proclaimed that it was a work of an unidentified pathogen.
祖父はその研究が軍にとって価値のあるものになるのではないかと予想し、予算を求めましたが、一生に付されたとか。
As a researcher, her grandfather was very talented and passionate, but when it came to gaining the aid of political powers, he simply struck out. Hinamizawa syndrome. No, the possible existence of a parasite that infected the human brain and controlled emotions. Even though he made the remarkable achievement of discovering a mystery no one had explained before him. He was unable to convince others of that achievement, and spent his life alone, unable to garner support and unable to achieve proper recognition for his achievements. Independent research has its limit. Talented people, funding, and backup. A research project can be successful only if all those things are present. Takano had noticed her grandfather's mistakes, and that was why she did everything she could to obtain all that.
当時の上層部は即効性でしかも普遍性の高い治療薬を期待していた。高野君の研究は非常に興味深いものではあっても、当時の軍には期待されなかったということだの。
ですが先生は唯一祖父の研究に理解を示してくれたと聞いています。祖父は先生のことを無二の親友と記していました。
高野君とは同郷だった。同じ蕎麦屋を知る人間と遠方の戦地で会えるというのは奇跡的なことだったの。彼とは年は離れていたが、私たちは固い友情で結ばれていたのだ。だから高野君からはよく話をされたの。画期的な研究になるに違いない。本格的な研究のために予算をつけられるよう根回ししてほしいと何度も相談を受けた。
祖父の手記にも先生がいろいろと各方面に掛け合ってくださったことが記されています。結局祖父の研究が認められることはありませんでしたが、先生だけが理解者でいてくれたことはきっと存命中。
だが結局は何の力にもなれんかった。だから高野君にしてやれなかった協力を美代ちゃんにするんだ。美代ちゃんに協力するのは高野君に対する私の罪滅ぼしでもある。
ありがとうございます。祖父は良い親友に恵まれたと思っています。
Okay. I mean, it was a bit evident before, but I guess the relationship is actually better than I thought, because they were introduced kind of more rocky, but it does seem that they legitimately respect and care about each other. Honestly, if you think about it, it's just banter. It's actually like it was just kind of like Keiichi pervert banter, so guess it was fine. Sorry, I was muted a bit.
軍上層部に先生のように理解を示してくれる方が少しでもいてくれたなら、祖父の人生はもっと違ったものになっていたかもしれないと思うと、とても悔しく思います。
The old man closed his eyes and paused for a moment. Shortly after, he looked into the distance and spoke.
実はな、真実はそうではない。上層部は高野君の発見に少なからず関心を持っていたのだ。
それは初耳です。でもそれならなぜ祖父の研究を認めなかったのですか？
ある事情により高野君にひなみ沢症候群を研究させたくない都合ができたのだ。その理由は私と一部の高級将校しか知らん。私を除き全員が他界した今、
Oh God, I have no
高野
idea.
君の後を継ぐ美代ちゃんには話しておこうと思う。
研究させたくない都合
I mean, I guess he wouldn't.
ですか？
I guess he wouldn't get an idea about it. Takano had believed until this day that her grandfather's research was ridiculed by everyone, which was the reason why it had never gained any recognition. Her grandfather had asked the military for funding so we could uncover the secret of Hinamizawa syndrome during the war. But just like the old man had said earlier, the military wanted an instant acting weapon. That was why they weren't interested in his research. That's what she had believed. But as it turned out, the military had actually shown an interest after all. Before I go on, I need to explain about the Kwantung Army in Manchuria at the time. While the Kwantung Army was stationed in Manchuria, opinions were divided on whether to advance their forces north or south. At the time, Japan had troops in Manchuria, but opinions were divided upon advancing north to deter the Soviet Union or advancing south to expand their territory and secure resources. With the Soviet Union and its predecessor, Russia, being landlocked, frozen nation, they had long yearned for ice-free port that wouldn't freeze over in winter. Or did I say winter? Yeah. They made numerous attempts to expand their territory southward too. Those expansionist policies were said to be the cause of the Russo-Japanese War. In the history books, it said that Japan won the Russo-Japanese War, but it was actually a draw, ending in a peace signed at the Treaty of Portsmouth. Both sides had simply set aside their spears after mutually exhausting their forces. It wasn't like Russia capitulated and offered a complete surrender. As a result, the perception of the Russian threat continued to smolder. Later, the Russian Empire was overthrown by a revolution, but Japan was unable to shake the threat that the new Soviet Union would advance south. According to the history books, Japan went south. They signed the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact and abandoned the northern advance. As a result, when the Great Patriotic War began, the Soviet Union was able to respond to great pressure on their German front by pouring in their eastern forces. Though the Germans had managed to lay siege to Moscow, the Soviets launched a massive counteroffensive that reversed the tides of war. Even with the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact, the Soviets couldn't tell if Japan would attack them at some point. Because of that threat, the Soviets had to leave some forces in the Far East, and they weren't able to devote enough troops to the German front. For starters, the Soviets had forged the Germany-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact too. Yet Germany broke the treaty and attacked the Soviet Union. To make matters worse, Japan and Germany had forged a military alliance. With all those factors in play, the Soviets naturally couldn't trust Japan to uphold their neutrality pact. Ironically, the Soviet Union was the one who broke the pact, but I won't go into that now. Exactly, Hitler signed the Tripartite Pact because he expected Japan to keep the Soviets' other front in check. But ultimately, Japan had abandoned the North. With the support of German offense, many supported the idea of waiting and watching it play out. They believed that even if we did advance north, it would be after Germany conquered Moscow. However, that plan was to expose the surge, and the Soviets transferred their heavy tanks from the Far East border to the German front. That secured Germany's defeat at Moscow, and the Germans began seeing a string of defeats starting with the Battle of Kursk. It was a turning point in history, huh? During the Cold War, the Soviet Union was recognized as a global power, but at least in the 1940s, the Kwantung Army didn't think it was a particular threat. Japan had earned a victory with the Russo-Japanese War, and they took the new Soviet Union government lightly, assuming it wouldn't be stable after overthrowing the Russian Empire. That underestimation was corrected after the Nomonhan incident in 1941. After several fierce short-term battles with the Soviet Union's advanced mechanized corps that led to great losses, the Kwantung Army realized they shouldn't fight the Soviets and inclined Japan towards the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact. But at the very least, up until the Nomonhan incident, the Kwantung Army was strongly conscious of the Soviets and divided on advancing north or south. Thanks to that, there were also voices advising caution, suggesting we avoid all-out war with China in order to shore up our forces against the Soviets. But the Sino-Japanese War broke after the Marco Polo Bridge incident, right? July 1937. The Japanese and Chinese armies were staring at each other across the Lagao Bridge in Beijing. My history isn't too great. I do know about the Well, I know the basics, but I don't know most of what they're talking about. It was the middle of the night on July 7th. I mean, obviously this is World War II, but yeah. The Chinese army fired on the Japanese army in training, and they engaged in combat. This triggered the long Sino-Japanese War. Yes, according to historical records, that incident triggered the Sino-Japanese War, but with opinions divided on advancing north or south, the army was equally divided over a full-scale confrontation with China. No, in fact, we even received orders from General Staff Headquarters to resolve the matter quietly before the incident grew much bigger. So those supporting the northern advance wanted to settle the Battle of Ladu Bridge quietly, insisting that the conflict with China was pointless in light of their anti-Soviet strategy. However, those on the mainland supporting the southern advance used this incident to cause to dispatch more troops in China. They enacted the hard policies against China, and thus the Marco Polo Bridge incident became the trigger for Japan and China to enter all-out war. After that, their bitter struggles in the Nomonhan incident, Japan greatly revised their Soviet strategy. They signed the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact and secured the route for their southern advance. The Sino-Japanese War got worse and worse. If the Marco Polo Bridge incident hadn't happened, it's possible that history would have gone very differently. Maybe we wouldn't have ended up with a war with them. However, the South faction didn't get that chance. The military authorities would have kept restraining the Soviet Union, and the Soviets would have had to divide their forces between the East and West. And maybe Germany could have invaded Moscow. Then Japan could have gone to Siberia. The map could have been very different today. Germany wouldn't necessarily have won the war if they had succeeded in taking Moscow. England was keeping its own strength on the other side of the Dover Strait. After all, the United States was poised to enter the conflict. Besides, Napoleon once occupied Moscow, but in the end he couldn't beat their winter and had to withdraw. It's one of those ifs, huh? The Axis might have won the war. Yes, it's possible that the gunshot from Marco Polo Bridge incidents changed the tides of history. Both sides had different opinions of who fired the shot, right? According to the Japanese side, a Chinese soldier fired a shot at the Japanese soldier who got too close to the Chinese camp. However, the Chinese side claimed the shot was a conspiracy invented by the Japanese military. But the shot was fired. Even though nobody knew who actually pulled the trigger, it sparked the Sino-Japanese War. Yes, that's what the history books say. But Koizumi-sensei, what does that have to do with my grandfather? In the Marco Polo Bridge incident, a shot was fired at a unit that was training in the middle of the night. Everyone was summoned for a roll call. They were missing one soldier. The soldier came back later, and it was said that he was sent as a messenger and got too close to the Chinese camp. By the way, did you know the soldier was from Hinamizawa? Eh? Really? When Takano-kun was talking about Hinamizawa syndrome, he said that the soldiers from Hinamizawa could suddenly fall into a deranged state. And we realized that the soldier from the Marco Polo Bridge incident was in fact from Hinamizawa. And what about the first shot fired? I don't know the truth, but I think it's possible that the soldier within the terminal stage of Hinamizawa syndrome fired the shot. Yeah, definitely, but again, we don't know if it was true. I'm sure if a Chinese soldier saw a Japanese soldier getting too close, they would also probably fire a shot, so. That soldier was killed in the incident. Since there's no record of it, nobody knows exactly how he died. The Japanese side claimed that the Chinese army had fired at them and negotiated with that in mind. Just a few days after the incident, Japan demanded an apology from the Chinese and as a show of force dispatched 3 divisions of reinforcements. The Chinese side was of course opposed to that. The situation escalated at once. If research into Hinamizawa syndrome continued, the higher-ups thought it would negatively influence the Japanese army's claims. So in order to avoid the risk of traversing the political gray zone, they rejected Takano's twins' research. I wonder why. I don't really get the reasoning, just because one of the syndrome people fucked up. I feel like you can just turn that into, like, a reason to research it too, but I guess they just went the opposite way.
そのためこの時代になってもなお祖父の研究が顧みられるこ
It's
と
a
がなかった
weird mindset. I guess they are just playing it safe.
そうだ。
I guess it is better in general just to reject it, just to play safe, because it is kind of sketchy. The war is over now, but there are still some conflicts there regarding historical recognition.
高野君にその気はなくとも、ひなみざわ症候群の研究が公になれば、社会的な影響が強すぎて、一般大衆に不要の混乱と疑念を与えることにもなりかねない。そう危惧した重鎮たちが、今日に至るまで高野君の研究を黙殺するよう、私も高野君に協力しないよう長く釘を刺されておった。
Takano tried to remain calm, but she couldn't stop herself from grimacing. She had just found the real reason why her grandfather's research had been ignored, and it was because of secret maneuvers by political masterminds. That definitely might change, because her original objective that she claimed in the last chapter was she wanted to, like, help. I mean, even now she's like, she wants to help the research, but that does over the course of time change into her wanting to become a curse. So kind of changes from the idea that she wanted. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just explained it. If those masterminds feared it so much, ironically that meant they acknowledged the importance of his research. Takano was saddened and frustrated to no end by her grandfather's lonely life.
だがそういう連中は高いし、もう当時を知る者は私しかおらん。もし今まだ高野君が生きていたなら、私はそれを誤って全面的な協力を申し出るつもりだった。だが彼はもういない。だから私はミオちゃんに謝り、高野君にするはずだった協力を君にしようと思っているのだ。
よろしいのですか。私がひなみざわ症候群の研究をすることで蒸し返しになるということはありませんか。
もう当時とは時代が違う。それにひなみざわ症候群の研究には単なる風土病では済まされないものが潜んでおる。研究によっては医学の名前がつくあらゆる学会がひっくり返るような大発見になるかもしれん。
当時とはもう風向きが変わったということですね。
Yep, pretty much.
そうだ。不幸にも高野君は風向きが変わるまで存命することができなかった。だが幸いミオちゃんという後継者に研究を託せた。だから私はこの命ある限りミオちゃんの研究を最大限応援する。私は高野君に協力を約束したのに、さまざまなしがらみから力になれず彼を失望させた。その償いを命ある限りしていこうと思っている。それが高野君が無二の親友と呼んでくれた私のこの世に残された最後の仕事だと思っとる。
先生、本当にありがとうございます。
いや、いい。私も死ぬ前に洗いざらいを話せてすっきりした。とにかく私の目が黒いうちはミオちゃんの研究に一切の不自由はさせん。何かあったらいつでも頼りなさい。助力は惜しまないからの。
Takano couldn't even imagine what kind of bond this old man and her grandfather had between them. But thanks to that bond, Takano was able to gain a powerful supporter. Tears welled up in Takano's eyes as she gave him an emotional look, but in her mind she was practically dancing at the promise of the old man's full support. The old man and Takano both bowed at the same time to show each other their appreciation. Once that was done, the old man became a little more serious. After that far too lengthy preamble, he finally said what he really wanted to tell her.
そういうことだ。私が言いたいのはつまり、ひなみ沢症候群には歴史すらも作りかねない魔力が宿っているということだ。それは日本社会すらもねじ曲げかねない。そこのところをよく肝に銘じて慎重に研究をしなさい。
Okay. New scenery, dude. We're jumping places. After the proprietor finished serving the food, she bowed and left. The room wasn't very tasteful put together, reminding them of a tea ceremony room. While it was sparsely decorated, and quite a bit of money had obviously gone into it. This was a very famous Japanese restaurant where many high-up officials and other important people held secret meetings. Takano was there, accompanied by about 5 gentlemen. She was sitting slightly further away from the men. They were clearly in a much more important position than she was. Also, I didn't really mention it, but I did just assume that Takano wasn't really too much into the research of the disease. She was more of just the muscle or whatever. Kind of like just the commander of the security, but obviously she does actually have knowledge about the disease and probably researches it, even though again it didn't really show that in the other ones. At least I just assumed. One of the men wearing an expensive double-breasted suit told Takano not to be so nervous.
どうぞお楽に、高野さん。今回の件、非常に興味深く読ませていただきました。このような研究が数十年にわたり眠り続けてきたとは。
驚きです。過去に行われていたこの類の研究はほとんどが実らず、スタッフも解散となって何も残っていないと思っておりましたよ。
この研究は上層部にもほとんど相手にされなかったと聞いております。
なるほど。故に誰にも知られず、そして誰の追求も受けなかったというわけですな。その意味においてだけは本当に幸運でした。
高野先生の研究を高野さんが引き継ぐとは面白い。これも因縁ですかな。まるであなたの体を借りて個人が研究を完成させようとしているかのようです。
本当にそうかもしれませんわね。私も奇妙な因縁を感じます。
Takano adored Takano Hifumi and called him grandfather, but she hadn't revealed the relationship to others. Okay, so they don't actually know. She realized it wouldn't be beneficial for people to think she was involving personal feelings in her continuing for Dr. Takano's research. So publicly, she once had exchange with Takano Hifumi, and after his death, discovered his research documents and with his remains, and chose to carry it on. At least that's how the story went.
それで先生方、いかがでしょうか。
いくつかの省庁がね、非常に強い関心を持ったよ。中川君が言うには、防衛庁の技術研究本部が強い関心を示してくれてね、研究のスポンサーを名乗り出てくれた。
おお、それは朗報じゃないですか。おめでとう、高野さん。
ありがとうございます。
なんでも向こうが言うにはね。
There's a research council for the next generation deterrence being led by experts from several different ministries.
この中でアルファベットプロジェクトというのがあるらしい。高野さんはご存知ですかな？
There's no way she would know about something like that. But it was very possible for these nationalists to research something dangerous without citizens knowing about it. Society forms something like a web made of connections between people. People hold hands with other people who share the same ideas, end up knitting a net. Of course, some nets are well known, but there are some secret ones too. So there's no way of guessing. just how the men at this meeting were connected. A society involved researching deterrent weapons for the next generation. The Alphabet Project. With those words, it's possible to imagine what they might entail. Deterrent weapons. That usually refers to nuclear technology. Weapons are normally used to destroy enemies. However, the general idea of deterrent weapons is very different. The assumption is that they won't actually be used against anyone. Nuclear weapons are largely used as a threat to prevent enemy invasion. Both the US and Soviets possess large stockpiles of nuclear arms, keeping the other in check. But they will have never actually used them, because if they did, there'd be a nuclear war and both countries would be destroyed. So they're like a legendary weapon you never draw. Of course, that last resort was only works because both sides have nuclear weapons. If one side lacks them, then they lose all the military negotiation power. In other words, nations without nukes are powerless before nuclear armed states. That can't be true. Japan abandoned nukes and it still functions as a nation today. Or so some people may be thinking, but they're wrong. Japan abandoned nukes but lies under nuclear umbrellas by allying itself with America. That means the nation functions thanks to America's nukes. However, that also means we must resign ourselves forever being a vassal of America, in order for Japan to escape that and become a powerful nation equal to America. It must possess its own deterrent arms and step out from the nuclear umbrella. That society must have been put together by experts who believe in that ideal. Given that, the name Alphabet Project makes sense. Nuclear weapons are weapons of mass destruction. However, weapons of mass destruction aren't always nuclear. They also include biological weapons and chemical weapons. Atomic, biological, chemical, the initials of these three words make up ABC. That's why weapons of mass destruction are sometimes called ABC weapons. I didn't know that. It's kind of neat. I won't go into weapons of mass destruction that don't belong to those three categories. ABC, Alphabet. In other words, Alphabet Project must be code research for research into weapons of mass destruction. As it happened, this guess of Takano's was correct. By rights, Japan should possess nuclear arms. We established ourselves as a peace-loving nation after the war, and after our vast internal contributions, we've been recognized as a permanent member of the UN. Yet until we possess nuclear arms, we won't be recognized as a proper nation. I didn't know. Is it loud for people? It's like semi-loud for me, but I don't know. That could have just been because we didn't have music for a while. I'll turn it down a bit. We can turn it back up if it's actually wasn't loud. This is a long-held desire of post-war Japan. Exactly. However, realistically, thanks to the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, the major nations hold monopoly on nukes. Worse, our domestic popular opinions is growing allergic to nukes, so foreign and domestic pressures make implementing them impossible. Biological and chemical weapons are sometimes known as the poor man's nuke. Small countries that can't own nuclear weapons have already started research into that kind of weaponry. Takano, please don't misunderstand us, okay? The purpose of our research isn't to obtain a biological weapon. Instead, our goal is to prevent such weapons from coming into Japan from other countries. So this research into self-defense, this is research into self-defense. I want you to understand that. Yes, I'm aware of that. Takano hated this Japanese tendency to make excuses, but she didn't let it show on her face. No matter what they said, they already saw the value in using this research towards biological weaponry. However, in truth, that was just an excuse as well. If they actually wanted to research biological weapons, then it would be much faster to research diseases like smallpox and anthrax instead of an unidentified disease like Hinamizawa syndrome. So it wasn't actually correct to say the defense agency was interested in it as a biological weapon. In other words, Takano needed a powerful sponsor who could back her up with funding, personnel, and a facility to conduct her research. She used her connections and turned to the old men behind the government and economy. reaching out to each of them and getting them to forcefully pull funding out of the defense agency under the excuse of its application towards biological weaponry. That was the truth. Therefore, her project wasn't officially recognized by the defense agency. Yeah, we know that. Okay. To be exact, the people who secretly controlled the defense agency were the ones who knew about it. These masterminds diverted the funding from the defense agency to the Alphabet Project. And then they pushed for Takano's research to be a part of it. Takano gets their funding, and influencers get to drain public funds through kickbacks. Considering that, it was doubtful that this project was genuinely about researching the next generation of deterrence arms. It's probably an excuse for masterminds to funnel their money into their own pockets. While those complicated matters didn't matter to Takano. Whatever those odd men and influencers were planning wasn't her business. As long as she could get funding to her research, that was enough. Either way, Takano had found her sponsor. It was one of the biggest organizations around too. This had always been her grandfather's dream. Takano was trying to stay calm, but she was about to jump up and down in excitement.
中川君としては今回の件十分に研究が進んだら丸ごと買い取って構わないと言ってくれてる。まだまだ未完の研究だが、その将来性については十分に理解できてるようだ。
おっしゃる通りです。この研究はまだ道半ばで、十分な資金と施設、人材が欠かせません。
それでだね。ここからが交渉になるんだが、向こうとしてはこの研究丸ごと抱えてしまいたいのが希望らしいんだ。こう言っちゃ悪いんだが、君一人に任せるには荷が重いと考えてる。
It's where my boy Tomotaki comes in, I think. Hearing that put quite the damper in Takano's ecstasy.
私はお金が欲しくて研究している。
I guess she just wanted it to be. Whoa. No, never mind. I guess like Takano's not the main boss. They wanted kind of like a joint project or whatever.
一人の研究者として知的探求心からです。私に必要なのはスポンサー。先方が求めるのは成果。そういう関係に期待したかったのです。
Takano realized she was talking rather breathlessly, so she tried to calm herself down. Either way, they'd be backing the research. Considering they're hoping for results that merit the budget, they probably feel that Takano is still too young to handle it.
分かってます。高野さんが今日まで積み上げてきた研究を横からかっさらわれたんじゃ、それはあんまりですからね。
I do agree with Takano that I see it in a lot of Japanese dramas too. A lot of business people do have that habit of making making excuses, but like wording it in like certain ways to sound it's like, yeah, to like hide their intentions. It's kind of, it's not weird because I'm sure everyone does it, but it's very distinct, I feel, in Japanese stuff. Like this right now, these sentences.
もちろん向こうにもそれは伝えました。それで出てきた折衷案がこれです。まずアルファベットプロジェクト内の新規事業として高野さんの研究を立ち上げます。理事会の承認を経れば正式に予算を作ることができますからね。高野さんには客員という形でプロジェクトに参加していただき、研究に携わるという形になります。
Yikes. If she wanted their funding, she'd have to fall under their authority, of course. So far, she had no objections. Okay.
いくつかの条件を挙げています。一つは先ほど先生が申し上げたこの度の研究に関する分野で優秀な才能を持つ人物に研究筆頭を委ねることです。
お言葉を返すようですが、私以上にこの研究に詳しい人物が高野先生を除いて存在するとお思いですか？
まあそこは高野さんを抑えて。
I love the diffusing.
それではその人物に私が研究を売り渡すのと何も変わらないではありませんか。全く話が違います。
落ち着きなさい。
Calm down, Takano. Those cunning old men didn't miss sight of their faint leak of anger that crossed Takano's expression. They gave evasive laughs, as if remarking how immature she still was, if she let her emotions show over such a little thing. However, they weren't laughing to look down on Takano. On the contrary, they were trying to tell her to wait until the end.
もちろんそこはあなたのやりやすいように手を打ちます。小泉先生からあなたをよろしく頼むと念を押されているんです。大恩ある小泉先生に託されたあなたを大丈夫です。ここは一つ私に任せてください。あなたもそして連中も納得するうまい妥結点を用意します。
と申しますと、
その人物の人選は私が握っているということですよ。
Everyone chortled except Takano. After a moment, she joined in. In other words, he meant that he would find just the right person. The defense agency had suggested finding an expert to lead the project because they didn't feel comfortable with just Takano. However, Takano's sponsor was the one tasked to find such a person. In that moment, Takano realized it. Ah, how wonderful it is to have such powerful backer.
万事私に任せてください。あなたがやりやすい候補者をこちらで探し。
So she gets to handpick the people, I think? Is that what they're saying? I thought it might be that I thought they would just like choose Takano, but obviously that doesn't work.
高野さんはその中から
Yeah.
組みやすいと思う相手を選べばいい。
So she has more control of the situation than the defense agency would have liked, I guess. Takano felt better after hearing that. While she wouldn't be the official head of the project, she would end up leading it from the shadows. Of course, she wasn't an expert per se. Having a partner would actually be beneficial.
この件しばらく先方と私の方で調整します。もちろん高野さんの満足のいく形で決着できるようにしますので。しばらく。
お世話になります。
そうだそうだ。防衛庁の話だけじゃないよ。法制省の永田君も一枚噛んでくれるそうだよ。国立
Nice.
感染症予防研究所の伊藤君を紹介してくれてね。
Oh, that's where Tomotaki comes from, right?
機材や技術についてのバックアップを名乗り出てくれてる。
So Erie is from the defense people's agreement, and Tomotaki comes from that sector.
本当ですか？ありがとうござ
Dude,
います。
I wonder if we're gonna get like a wholesome Takano Tomotaki arc or chapter, I guess, not an arc. I would love that. Please bless me, game.
もうこれは立派な国家プロジェクトですな。おめでとう高野さん。これも今日までのあなたと、そして高野先生の地道な研究が評価された結果です。
いえ、すべて高野先生の努力の成果です。私などまだ何も。
謙虚なのは実にいいことです。小泉先生もおっしゃっておられましたが、本当に高野さんはいい方ですな。可愛がられているというのもうなずけます。
それでですね、向こうとしては高野さんの身分を防衛庁で預かってしまいたいようです。幸い高野さんは医師免許をお持ちですからね。研究本部の遺憾として身分を保証するようです。
Nice.
公務員になれということですか？これは意外な話ですね。
アルファベットプロジェクトに携わる研究機関のほとんどは公的機関です。今回の研究は陸自も強い関心を寄せており、職員を陸自から派遣したいと強く要望してきています。ですので場合によっては身分は陸自の扱いになるかもしれません。まあこの辺は役人の縄張り争いだと思ってください。その役人たちの上に立つには役人の身分が必要になってくると。もちろんどういう形になろうとも高野さんが不快に思うようなことにはしませんから安心。
わかりました。そのあたりはお任せいたします。しかし高野先生がかつて軍にこの研究の援助を求めた時には断られたことを、防衛庁に興味を示されたのが意外というか、遅いというか複雑な気持ちですね。
ああ、仕方ありますまいな。
With the war situation worsening, the Japanese military sought something with immediate effect, something that could turn the war around.
決して高野先生の研究を見下していたわけではないはず。
No one else knows about the Hinamizawa guy incident except for Kazumi, which I assume is dead, or maybe they're alive. He's alive. Whatever, doesn't really matter. And Takano, so. That wasn't true, of course. Takano already heard the confession from the old man. She exhaled. To her, it was like meeting in front of her was happening somewhere far away. She had longed for this day to come and worked so hard to reach it. Finally, her grandfather and his research were attaining recognition. This was the day she dreamed of. So she had frightened, just imagining that it might be an actual dream. True joy can't be felt all at once. Oftentimes it's a delayed reaction. Takano thought that must be exactly what she was feeling. Music switch though. Major Takano. The beginnings.
これは素晴らしい。高野三叉ですか。いやいや、羨ましいですな。男に生まれたからには一度くらいは自分のことを階級で呼ばれてみたいものですが。いやいやいや、高野三叉ですか。
三叉何ですか？
ああ、自衛隊の階級のことで三等陸佐のことです。企業でいうところの副部長くらいでしょうね。おそらくその階級がプロジェクト発足時に高野さんに与えられることになるかと思います。
昔でいうところの少佐ですよ。そういえば奇遇ですな。
Obviously, I don't know military rankings at all. Not even Canadian ones, so me lost. But I do understand that major is a leading position, right?
高野先生もかつては少佐の階級にあられたそうではありませんか。
Ah, there you go. Equals. Takano remembered suddenly. They were right. Her grandfather had been a lieutenant commander in the Japanese military. Everything she had done today was so that she could continue her grandfather's research. Now everything had fallen into place. Oh, you know what it is? What switched her to the Oyasho-sama's curse route, besides continuing the research, obviously, was the fact that the tides changed and the organization started cutting the budget. So I'm guessing that she just switched her motives when she found out it's probably not possible to finish it. Kind of like the same way for her grandfather. So it's kind of like low-key revenge. She had been granted the same rank as her grandfather. She had always believed that succeeding his research would be proof that they had a tighter bond than blood. And now she would even be the same rank as him. This is fate, Takano thought. Maybe this is even a message from Grandpa? Yes, it must have been a shout of encouragement from heaven. It was proof that she inherited not only his research, but his will as well. Takano couldn't help but feel a sense of destiny for attaining the rank of major.
おじいちゃん、私、ようやくここまで来たよ。
Nobody else could hear her say that, but her grandfather in heaven could. That's what Takano believed. She had only come so far. There were still a lot of things to do for the research to be recognized as great work. Otherwise, her grandfather won't become a god. She wouldn't become one either. You must become a god. That was in her grandfather's will. Ah, that was a will. But she probably put it in the notebook. Unless she's just taking the will from the notebook. I was unable to do so. The line preceded it. It was her grandfather's dying wish. Well, I guess it's a will, even though it's not officially a will, because it is his last desires to her. Her grandfather entrusted it to her. All of his research. A god can't be physically brought back to life. A god is made to the hearts of the people who remain alive. Her grandfather will live on in her heart. His exploits will be known to many, and all the scholars will fight to read his documents, to steal them from each other. And they will learn about Hifumi Takano, who began his research during the war. They will know that nobody understood him and that he ended up devoting his lonely life to research. And finally, they will extol his grand achievement. That's a chapter break. That felt like a long one. Maybe it just feels longer because the lines don't always work, so I'm reading a bit extra. But it's good. I already know I'm naming this episode Rise of Major Takano. Oh, that was a full chapter then. Oh, no chapter breaks, huh? We're just doing full first. No tips either, dude. Give me my tips, man. What's Higurashi without its tips? But hopefully you guys enjoyed. That's some backstory on... So first we got like some general backstory on Takano's beginning in the first chapter. Now we get like sort of her rise to power, or the humble beginnings of... Well, at first it explained like how she like gained power through respect and sort of the hardships of getting to her position without actually like going fully into it. And now it talked about how she actually got started on the Irie clinic stuff. So fun stuff. Anyways, me tired, so I'm gonna sign off. But thank you guys for watching. As always, I appreciate it. And next time, I guess if we're just going chronologically, we'll probably touch up on the hiring of Irie / meeting Tomotaki, stuff like that. Maybe we'll go flashback to see why the I mean, it kind of made sense why he committed suicide because of the military stuff. So maybe we won't flashback, but like we still don't know exactly what happened in the orphanage. So I'm kind of interested in that. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. I enjoyed it too. And yeah, see you guys Saturday. Full chat, dude. One video, one chapter. It's a new pace. But yeah. Anyways, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.